pull up your, okay, there's your questions.
We're just doing a second interview with Illuminati Insider, and we'll say hello to Orty and the people eventually that'll read this book. We're not going to mention the insiders by name, insider's name, and we're just going to keep it private. But it is a male, and he's got quite a bit of influence in the world. So. We'll start with the first question.
Okay, you want me to ask the question, or are you going to do it?
Yeah, you asked the question.
Okay, so question number one is defection from the Illuminati rare?
Well, first of all, I want to say that when you grow up in the Illuminati families and you grow up with influence from someone in the Illuminati, um, you got to understand in witchcraft and those families, Christianity and Jesus is perceived as weak and stupid and misinformed, and your God, the person you serve, is Lucifer, and he's more powerful, and he um, he um, he answers your requests and things that you want. You get everything that you want, and so there's little there's little compulsion to go after anything that is Christian, and to go after Christ. Now you would understand from the scriptures. It says that it's the Holy Spirit that compels us and compels people to salvation, and it's not a work of man, but it's actually a work of God, and that is true. So it doesn't matter when you understand that concept. It really doesn't matter how much programming has gone into a person. If the Holy Spirit wants to compel them to be saved, the Holy Spirit can have His way. So the defections happen. There's certainly books you can find of people and videos you can find of people who've defected from the Illuminati, but it's not the most popular reading amongst people who are still in it. And but some people have to totally renounce and flee from all their money and their wealth, and just lay everything down and just trust God, that God is going to supply their needs, and is going to look after them. But it certainly is happened, and I'm in touch with people who I hope uh, in the course of time to maybe introduce you to a few people who are interested in having a relationship with Jesus, and uh, living a life where they've secured their salvation. Uh, you know, it's interesting. Matthew's often considered what it would be like to grow up in a Jehovah's Witnesses house, and if you grew up from birth in that indoctrination, it'd be very hard to break out of it because that's all you know. And so that's an example similar to what the Illuminati is like, because you've been indoctrinated into it, and it's hard to see anything outside of that focus. And but I've always been a man who's done my own research, and I've read the Bible many times, and I've always had a seeking heart, and and yeah. So there have been defections, but once again, they're not popular, and a lot of them have been destroyed or killed for their defection, and and but it's many times it's a walking away without anything, like without any property, without any resources, without any finances, just leaving all the bank accounts, leaving everything, and just totally walking away, like your missionary would leave their country and leave their family and leave their bank accounts and leave everything and just go to a foreign land on an adventure to share Christ with natives. Um, the same is true of a true defection.
No, I don't know anybody in the Illuminati. I don't have any friends, and you're the only one I've talked to or we have any knowledge of. I mean, I've read books about the Illuminati, but that's different. Um, you're the only person that is in there that we can talk to about uh, what it's like. And this begs the question. The question was, is defection from the Illuminati rare? And that begs the question: if Lucifer is giving you everything you want, why would you leave?
Well, that's one of the things is that you know a woman can have great looks, and she can be a film star and have great opportunities and great film and great looks and a great husband and a great house and great cars. But sometimes dissatisfaction comes in. You have all the best of whatever and you're not fulfilled. And you Christians talk about that God part, that part of us that needs God. And no matter what Lucifer has supplied, there's still that part that yearns to be filled by the Spirit of God. And so um, he knows that there's going to be a certain percentage that aren't happy, that aren't satisfied, and so he can't do a complete job, even though that he's an imposter. He doesn't fill that void in a person's heart, and so there's certain people who they're not doing it by choice. Often they may be up at 3 a.m. in the morning, coming home from work and winding down from work, and turn on the TV and Joyce Meyer is on TV, and she's talking about how she's sexually abused, and she's talking about a rough life that she has, and then she starts talking about some of the things God has done for her, and she's so real and she's so raw that you know even the hardest of people uh, can't 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 um, ignore the reality of the experience that she's having, and the encounters that she's had, and the testimony that she's got. It's so authentic, and so you you can never be sure, and Satan can never be sure that he's got someone uh, forever, because the Holy Spirit is a powerful influence, and so uh, people don't discuss it unless they've got good friendships and good bonds, but the the people that I know have respect for some Christians, um, and and but it all comes down to authenticity. A person's got to be authentic, and we know what sales is, and we know when someone's selling something, and much of the Christian game is just salesmanship, and but someone like Joyce Meyer, and I've seen Joyce Meyer in the middle of the night, and you know, it's hard to deny when she starts crying and talking about her abuse, and she fills up with tears, and she talks raw and honestly. And so he can't supply everything, you know. He wouldn't he wouldn't have this big agenda to sway the Democrats. And like, if he had all this control, if he had all this control over people, he'd have the whole game sewed up. But it's, you know, he may even lose this American election right now because his grip is tenuous. You know, he hasn't got a firm grip on people. Um, people can't be predicted, and yeah, so he's confident. He's very proud, but he doesn't win with everybody. And all it takes is one of those Holy Spirit moments with someone like Joyce Meyer on TV. She's the only one I can mention. Matthew doesn't know a lot of people who play in the United States on television, but she's authentic one. Andrew Womack has affected me in the past too, with his fair income sort of. Fair income's an Australian word, but with his genuine. Well, you know, people of money, people of great resource. One of the key factors we're looking for is someone to be genuine. There's so many lies and there's so many smokes and mirrors. Where, you know, the number one thing we're looking for is authenticity in people. And we've seen so many lies and we've seen so many smokes and mirrors that it's hard to see a clear image in the fog.
So it would still take something pretty unusual to leave all of your possessions, to leave all of your bank accounts, to leave all the things that you've worked your entire life for, to listen to someone who's quote unquote authentic. I mean, there's got to be a bigger draw. That would make sense that you're going to be influenced by a person like that. But I mean, like, let me give an example. I went through some training on rescuing abused children, and they talked a lot about gangs because the gangs run most of that business. And they talked about what it's like to leave a gang or what it would take to leave a gang. And for an entry level person or a mid level person, what they do is they just take that person several hours away, way outside of that gang's, you know, jurisdiction, so to speak, and they would start a new life. But in a situation where the Illuminati is so well connected internationally, where is a person going to go when they defect, or where are they going to go?
That's the hard thing. Some of them have to almost disappear,
Right,
and and you can see it's not a spare of the moment thing.
right.
Um, a person may take years of watching Joyce Meyer and years of discovery. You know, what they call in court cases, like the discovery process, uh, when they do a whole lot of research, and so a person has to research, but they're going to be willing to lose their life for it.
Right.
And so um, that that question gets at the very heart of where I am. If I said my name and it was made public that I came over to Christianity, how long do you think I'd last?
Right.
You know, and so uh, I envisage that this book is going to be read by people who are involved, and I want people to know that they can make a decision for Christ and not make any discernible move, and you know, just like people go to war and they take lives as part of their duty. Um, you know, God knows we're in a war, and and but it's true. These people would have to be able to reach out and and reach out to the right people and be hidden, and someone would have to take on some person or organization would have to take on the responsibility of feeding and clothing and looking after the personal interests of the person. But they'd have to be willing, if they were going to fully come out, they'd have to be willing to let go of everything, because money can be traced and
Right.
finances can be traced, and that they'd just have to pack their bags and leave everything, which means that it'd have to be a radical conversion. And this is one of the reasons we're going to talk about it in a further question, but this is one of the reasons why Jesus has been appearing to me for so many years in dreams, just to get the courage. And I'm let me assure you that I would be happy to do that. It's just with no money and no influence, I wouldn't be very effective, as effective as I could be with the resources that I've got right now and the contacts that I've got right now. So if you can understand it, it's like you have to have people on airplanes. Matthew sees people with flags on airplanes that release and accept the aircraft onto a flight deck. That's like the role that I've got right now, that I'll be directing traffic, directing people who are going to align with the last day's mission for God. And you're going to have defectors from Satan's generals into some of God's generals. If they could shift their finances and shift their resources into other ministries and other Christian organizations, then they could come free with, if they've shifted their allegiances and done the traffic control and brought people over, and everyone had been secured and turned, and it was time, they could leave and become no one, because they've used up all their influence. It's not as cut and dried and it's not simple. But you can think of the wealth that I possess. What would be the use of throwing all that away and me becoming someone that's never heard of before? And it's not that, I'd gladly do that because I've had enough. But it's the hundreds of people that I can influence where I'm at, that just with the one, as you can imagine, Matthew's heard of it. He hasn't experienced it, but he's heard of like code words. There's code words all through secret societies. There's a turn of phrase that you can use, which will tell someone else in a Masonic lodge that you're a Mason. But there's turns of phrase with two pedophiles meeting at looking at children in a park where children are playing. One pedophile can come along and say children are just so innocent, and the other response may be, yeah, I like them. I like children because they're so pliable to influence, and that can be the answer. And then they start a conversation about where are your children and who can you supply me with and stuff. It's just two code words that, if you're not a pedophile, someone saying children are so innocent, you just reply and say, yeah, they are, aren't they? And there'd be no more discussion. But because the code words are there, you can move into something. Well, there's so many code words in the Illuminati, and there's certain ways you can breach the wall, and you can make a breach, and So I'm busily working on it's only as we speak, it's only starting to get the ball rolling. And it's time, it's time that we have this defection. But yeah, I hope I answered some of your questions. It's just see, in your knowledge of the Christian church, Dundee, is there a place I could go? Who's equipped? Who's equipped to hide me?
I know that's my question. You'd have to go to the witness protection program.
Yeah, yeah, and you see so many movies of that being infiltrated that
Right.
you wouldn't be able to trust that. There's people in that hide people and bring people out of witchcraft, but if people knew who I was, I got a world recognizable face, so I can't even I just can't even go into any small town. People will wonder why I'm coming to the baker every day. Like what's he
Right.
doing in our town?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you mentioned we're talking about defection. We're talking about where would they go, the witness protection program. We're talking about why they would leave their life anyway if all their things are being supplied to them. This is a kind of an interesting question. Before we go further, you mentioned about the movie star who has it all, the big house, the husband, all the stuff, and she feels empty. And you said that the draw or the fulfillment of coming to the Lord Jesus would be to fill that God-sized hole in your heart. I mean, I've heard that term stated that way. For a person to leave everything they have to fill a God-sized hole in their heart, can you fill in the blanks? Let's go to the second question. We're going to help add information on the second question. You said that Jesus has been speaking to you in dreams, appearing to you in dreams. It's for somebody that doesn't know the Illuminati, there's somebody that's maybe doesn't even know who Jesus is, but they say, oh, this guy, whoever he is, has all this stuff, and now someone's appearing to him in a dream, and now he's going to go over to that side. There would be something more important than just leaving your stuff for a guy you see in a dream. Can you talk more about this experience of having Jesus appear to you in dreams and why those experiences would lead you into the direction of Christianity?
Well, first of all, I got to ask you because Matthew's not relying on his own prophetic knowledge, and he's just letting me speak freely through. So he's not going to use his prophetic gift in my voice and what I'm listening. Let me ask you: Have you ever had Jesus appear in a dream to you?
Not that I can remember.
Right. Well, you never forget it. It's a dream you never forget, and when he consecutively turns up, it's the same as I suppose if you put your hand on a hot stove, right, and then someone puts your hand on a hot stove later on, you're not really ready to get your hand put on a hot stove the third time, right? The first one burns an image, the second one reinforces that image, and the third time, you're absolutely convinced you don't want to have anything to do with the hot stove. Well, if you can take that in reverse, that's how Jesus affects you when he appears in your dreams. That it becomes real, then more real, then even more real. And it seems contrary, but he's got a big mission. It seems contrary for me to say that I'm not just going to step out and do things, but there's millions and millions and millions of people involved in darkness, and he wants to do a harvest of darkness. So someone's got to be the Messiah of the darkness. People have got to work actively behind the scenes and do things. And so he's been wooing me, for years. I knew about the promised one, the legend, and for years I've been interviewing people about this legend, and it's a mystique. It's something that a lot of Illuminati know about, this legend, and even the Matrix was made about it. And Satan knows, Lucifer knows that there's going to be a big uprising at the very end, that it's not going to be easy to win this war. There's a war coming, there's a big war coming, and it's not going to be easy to win it. That's why he's trying to batten down the hatches now and control the Democrats and control everything now, because he's he's desperate because time is running out. So the compulsion of the consecutive visitations by Jesus, a lot of times he was just saying hello. A lot of times he was talking about my future and the role I was going to play. And so he said that he said to me that I'll be responsible for having a part to do with the legend, and that's evolved. So it's been a life study. He caught something that was an interest of mine, and then started appearing and telling me I'm going to have a part to play with this this Christian that turns the world around, and it became exciting to me. But I. It's not always in a green park with a nice river flowing beside it. You can imagine a vision of Jesus in long green grass and a nice stream, and he's got a nice cloak and speaking peacefully. That's what you see as a vision of Jesus. But I've seen myself in the future on earth doing things, sitting in boardrooms and doing things, and Jesus being in the corner of the room watching the board meeting, and visions of the future of what's happening. And when you think of that board meeting, and it seems to be a business meeting that's going ahead and you're making decisions for the world, it would be interesting if all the people in that room had turned, and they were discussing industries and brands that are gonna that are taking the world by force. So you saw it really clearly before. You saw an image of it. There's spider webs and there's webs everywhere, and everyone in the Illuminati has got this whole web around them.
Right.
And so it's careful surgery of detaching little spindles of attachment.
Right.
It's got to be done carefully, or there's a rip, and
Right.
yeah. So the continuation of the visions, the dreams have added to my faith and to my confidence.
So you had an understanding when Jesus was appearing to me, you had an understanding that that there was coming a point, I don't know if it was spoken or unspoken, that Jesus was saying, you're going to belong to me. You're going to partner with what I'm going to do. You're going to partner with something that you're interested in. And there's going to be a time when you're going to make that switch. So all these, right? This is true, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about this kind of blends into, you seem to talk a lot about a movement, say a movement of God. You seem to talk a lot about a war that's going to escalate and be very, there's other words you can put, but a gigantic war of good and evil, if you want to call it that. And this legend, or the one from the Matrix, is going to play a key role in that, and that's what you've been looking for. Number one, what role do you think this one or the legend is going to play that you're expecting?
Um,
Because I've seen the Matrix, and I see, is it parallel to that, or can you put it in more, today's terms?
Matthew just repeated, he watched the Matrix and he just repeated Matrix 1, and he forgets Matrix 2 and Matrix 3, but it's someone that's calling the army to fight, so yeah, one of your understandings, though not many Christians understand it, would be like the two witnesses understanding. But then even mentioning the two witnesses, most Christians have got no idea what the two witnesses are going to do. But it's like any army, for instance, you go to Iraq and you've got a general. Like when you fought in Desert Storm, there would have been a general on the ground that was commanding everything. He commanded the army, the Air Force, the Navy. He was in command of everything. Matthew imagines that's the case. So Christianity is going to have a general, and there's going to be a general marshalling the troops, and not all the troops will ever get to meet the general. And it mightn't be as simple as that. It might be behind the scenes, but the certain individuals going to rise up and have this influence. And I'm limited in what I can say is because the person carrying my voice isn't to know everything. There's so much of Matthew's future that he hasn't been told, and it's destructive for him to know. So it's limiting what I say on answer to that question, but it's going to be the old game is going to be done away with. There's going to be people rising up in this last day who start whole companies and who start brands, and successful brands like Levi's and Apple and successful Facebook, successful multinational brands, but they're Christian run brands, and they're Christian companies and Christian finance. And all of the money is going into kingdom, and there's going to be hundreds of kingdom businesses, and the people running them, the people working in them, and the profits by them are going to be used to pour out the gospel on the world. And the one is the legend is going to be in control of managing this army of businesses and Christians and running this show, and so just like Egypt was raped by Moses, just one person can have a big effect, and especially if that one person was given, or a couple of people was giving authority over plagues, and could bring earthquakes and do punishments and judgments. If a couple of people like these two witnesses had that power to judge nations, and that could have a powerful effect. So
Okay, go ahead.
yeah,
You mentioned that Lucifer is anticipating a war, like an escalating war that we haven't seen yet, or to the scale we haven't seen. What kind of a war are you describing?
it's not a physical war. It's not uh, like people fighting in a real war, although they're going to bust out and be part of it. But it's a final run. It's a final war on souls. It's like it's like uh, Apple and Microsoft competing for market share. It's like a real, advertising, people being mobilized, marketing, a real war for souls. There, at present, so many people are sleeping. So much of the church is asleep, and so many Christians are sleeping, and 95% of Christians couldn't care less about anyone else being saved.
Mhm.
And so, what's got to happen is there's got to be a whole lot of people mobilized that do want to save souls, and then them forming a ball that rolls down a mountain and causes an avalanche. And so rather than a small percentage of the world being saved, and a small percentage of the world having Christians who are interested in saving people, there's got to be an avalanche of people coming into the kingdom that want to save everybody. Um, so at present, you hear Mason, you hear witch, you hear warlock, you hear homosexual, and they're areas Christians don't want to even have any part of. Like they don't
Right,
want to even go into that. And
right.
Satan's quite happy, Lucifer's quite happy for them to be his, but um, there's a new breed of Christians going to rise up and take the fight to his kingdom, and so it's not that Lucifer wants to win more ground. It's he knows a lot of his ground is going to be stolen.
Let me ask another question. I was going to ask it later, but it seems to tie into this. It's hard for me to understand the question I'm about to ask you, the viewpoint I'm about to ask you. But how is it that Lucifer thinks he's going to rule the world instead of Jesus?
Uh, you can imagine, and people can people can uh, if you were told as a child that you were the one, right? You were the legend, right? And you had hundreds of dreams about ruling the world and winning the fight for Christianity, right? And every second prophecy you heard, someone was saying, you're going to change the world. You're the most important person in the world. If that wasn't true, you'd be built up with such a delusion and such pride that you could never be talked out of it. Uh, Lucifer's had this idea that ever since he wanted to ascend over the throne of God, that he's going to rule the world. And it's just been compounding and compounding and compounding, like that young guy who thought he was a legend. He's just been getting more and more feedback. And if honestly, if you look at the world, he looks like the ruler of the world. In the Bible, he's mentioned as the prince of the world and the ruler of the world. And he's become so emblazoned, so enmeshed in this delusion that he's going to rule things, that he just can't be talked out of it. He thinks that he's going to possess a human being, and take control of the world and kill all the Christians and take control of the world and rule the world for eternity. And he's just he's so wound up in pride, and he's so effective. You'd be shocked if I started. If we put on the computer screen the top 100 brands in the world and named the directors of the companies, you'd be shocked at how many Illuminati and Masonic families would be named if I had Matthew go through the screens. That he owns everything. He's running the show, and he's so confident of running it even worse. But he's not happy with running the show. He just wants to kill everything Jewish and everything Christian. And so he's gonna try his very best to do that. And he's got so many willing servants and slaves. You see them doing their concerts, like the American football concert, and all the Masonic imagery and stuff, and they're brazenly advertising Illuminati and Masonic signs, and he's just deluded with power.
Okay. That answer makes sense. It's hard for me to see that delusion, but I'm picturing that making sense to the person inside of that, especially if perhaps those underneath you are constantly reinforcing that message to you.
Yeah.
In other words, if his if his underlings were constantly reinforcing that message to him,
Yeah.
I can see where he would get stuck in that. It's like getting stuck in a wall in a room full of mirrors. That's all you see.
The same thing is if you have a whole lot of yes men around you.
Right. That's my point.
And
right.
No one's actually saying, "Hey, we're not going to win this one."
Right. Well, they can't, because they would be, that would be very bad for them, I'm sure. Where are they going to go?
Yeah.
They can't go back to God, so they're stuck.
Yeah.
So he's stuck in a delusion.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So you're saying that the currency, if you will, of the future war is the souls of men.
Souls.
Yes, the souls of men.
It's got nothing to do with money. It's all souls. Sex, money, and fame are tools that the enemy uses to win a soul. Like power, sex, and money are like tools he uses to win a soul over.
Okay.
And they sign up for money and fame. All these artists, they sign up for money and fame. And they sell their soul.
So you said that Lucifer is stuck in his delusion that he's going to rule the world. Do the Illuminati actually buy into this?
Yeah.
Or do they?
They're the foot soldiers.
Right, but you're seeing a different point of view, and others are seeing a different point of view. If you step back, and I mean, obviously some of them are stepping back and seeing that.
Well, for a time they are going to rule the world.
Right.
Yeah. So it's not just a delusion; it's a reality.
That's true. But what happens?
It's just that they don't believe that Jesus is going to come in the clouds and smash the Antichrist and go to war with people on earth. They don't believe that. That's just fiction.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then, in a sense, they are buying into that delusion.
Well, unless there's a supernatural ending, they've won the war.
Right.
It's I suppose it's hard. Like if there wasn't going to be a supernatural intervention, it's been won.
Right. I understand that.
But around the time the supernatural intervention, most of the souls will have chose their side.
Right.
So it's heading for a climax. Yeah.
Do you have any idea time frame on where this climax is going to take place? 10, 20, 30, 40 years, 400 years? I mean, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, what do you think, Dundee? Do you think the world at its current pace can last another 50 years?
No, I don't.
So where would you put the time?
You mean how would I spend that time?
Now, where would you put it? Between 10 and 20 years, or 20 and 30 years?
20 and 40.
Yeah.
That's just me personally, but
And I'll tell you, Lucifer doesn't know the time either.
I know that.
Yeah. He just knows his time is short now. Yeah. And it really depends on the last person coming to Christ. When the last person has come to Christ, when the last martyr has been killed, will be the second coming of Jesus. But as for second coming of Jesus, most people in darkness don't believe in that, because it's a fairy tale ending, like Jesus coming back to save the day. It's like, even that sounds weird, like even to you. You know, it sounds like a Hollywood ending of a film.
I guess you could say that. I mean, I look at the life of Jesus. I look at the things he said. I look at the things he did. I look at the crucifixion. If you take that entire story in its totality and look at the, like, almost as though you were a judge, you were doing a fact finding, and you look at all those facts and you dissect all those facts and look through history to verify all these different points. If all these different points were true, and at the very end, Jesus says, oh, by the way, I'm coming back and doing X, Y, and Z. Well, if you have this body of evidence that can be verified historically and otherwise, and then at the very end, Jesus were to say, you know, there's going to be a fairy tale ending, so to speak, then
Yeah.
it's not so much a fairy tale ending, because look at the body of evidence that occurred before that.
Yeah, I'm aware of that, Dundee. What I'm saying is, many people in darkness think that's a fairy tale.
Right, I understand.
Yeah, there's people who, you know, and they brought up. Remember, I'm coming through Matthew's intuition,
Right,
and coming through his framework of what he knows.
right,
But you know, as far as he knows, witchcraft are told Jesus is Satan, and
right,
for him to come and solve things, like Satan wouldn't, and
right,
Lucifer's their god.
right.
So he's the savior, he's the one, he's the light bearer. So the idea of Satan winning is repulsive to him. So the end times scenario that Christians believe in, no one in darkness believes, you know, and that's why they're all pushing to support this socialist agenda, because that's how they're going to turn the world into this Luciferian socialist sort of run one world system. And they're working heavily and catapulting the world toward it.
So let's say that we're in the picture I get in my mind is we're in the Holocaust, where the Jews are being hunted down. And, you know, let's say there's a person who is rescuing Jews, so to speak, from danger into safety. And let's say that person is you.
Yeah.
Only the context is you're rescuing people in darkness, to bring them into the safety being Jesus.
Yeah.
So if they believe all the things that you've just described to me and it's heavily indoctrinated into them, what would you say is the most effective way to reach that group of people that I don't know about? I don't understand them, but you do. What is the most effective way to reach them to help them understand, oh, by the way, you need to follow this direction I'm telling you to follow and go down this door? What would you suggest?
If they were reading this book, if they were watching this video or reading this book, I would tell them to ask Jesus to show himself to them and to
Okay.
prove to them his reality for who he is. If he's appeared to me for years in dreams, he can appear to anyone. He says that anyone who wants to know the truth shall see it. He said to Caesar, he that seeks the truth, and he's only looking for a willing heart. So if you're reading this so far and you're in the Illuminati or in the Masonic Lodge or you're a witch, and you honestly have your curiosity piqued, and you want to know the truth to this, well, rather than me saying things and words on a page or making an empty argument or saying what's convinced me, I've been convinced by my dreams. So ask Jesus right now, if you're reading this, start appearing to me in dreams, start sending Christians, authentic Christians across my path and show me the way to understanding. Show me the way to understanding.
That's a very good answer to that question. Right.
Show me the way to understanding. Show me the path of understanding.
Okay.
If you say that sincerely from your heart, Jesus will do that for you.
Right.
And it's going to be a combination of this book. It's going to be a combination of some of Matthew's books. It's going to be a combination of films and music and songs you hear on the radio. There's going to be a specific breadcrumb trail to Jesus, different for everyone. So it's not I refer you to this book, I refer you to this, because that'll just suit certain people. But there's going to be breadcrumbs that will lead you into a proper relationship with Jesus. But I'm talking to you, if you're in the Illuminati or in the Masonic Lodge or in witchcraft, I'm saying to you, just ask Jesus to show me the way to understanding. Show me the path of understanding, and you watch him show up.
So you would have a green light, so to speak, into bringing the Christian message into Hollywood, into the media, into the music industry, and all forms of influence that Lucifer is using right now against us Christians. You would see that would be very effective also, to bring the Christian message, because right now, it's kind of locked up, right?
Yeah.
How is a Christian going to go to Hollywood and say, hey, I want to bring an outwardly Christian movie to Hollywood? They're going to turn them away.
This
right?
is part of the last days movement. This is why it's got to take 30 years and not in the next 5 years, because
Right.
This is covered in Optimistic Visions of Revelation by Matthew. That
Right.
there's got to be Lucifer took the world with film, television, magazines, books, movies. We said that music, education system. He took the world by that, so it's got to be retaken.
Right.
And one thing you and I both know about Christian movies is they're cheesy.
Right.
You can't convert the world with cheesy movies.
Right.
So it's got to be like a Hollywood produced movie, but have a good message to it. So there's got to be infrastructure put in place.
Right.
It just can't be magically, turned around and changed. that prayer that we initiated in the people, that's one of the most massive changes. Like if this book was a bestseller and millions of people read this book, that's the most massive change if people just responded to that.
Right.
But once again, people have got to be motivated by something other than money.
Right.
You know, they've got to be motivated to win souls, and so much of the church are already convinced or sold the lie of money and possessions. They're running after money and possessions just as much as other people are.
Right.
And they've got no interest in saving souls.
Right.
And they got no compulsion or no understanding of how to do that. And they got no, and added to that, they got no interest in doing it.
So that begs the question. Let's say that there is a gigantic, massive souls, a massive, what would you call a harvest of souls, so to speak, where they could be, they could be the witches, the warlocks, the Illuminati. They could be people, drug addicts, prostitutes. They could be whatever, just regular everyday kids in school. Let's just take this ball and fill it up with a bunch of souls. Well, are you going to put those souls into this current church structure that worships money? No. So what are you going to do, and where are you going to put them? What's going to have to happen between now and this big ball of souls?
You're talking to me as though I'm a Christian, mate. Like you're talking to me like I got answers. What's going to happen is a new movement. It's going to be a new movement, a new form of church that they're going to call a cult church. And I don't know if it's how long since you've read Matthew's book, Optimistic Visions of Revelation, but it's covered in there that there's going to rise up a form of church that the modern church is going to call a cult, and they're going to rise up, and they're going to be authentic Christians, and they're all going to be part of the new movement and the new kingdom, and the companies, the Christian companies and Christian finances and Christian communities and Christian employees and so the old religious, Jesus talked about it, the old wineskin. The old wineskin isn't going to be used anymore. It's going to be a new wineskin, a new people group, and it's going to be made up of revivalists. You got revivalists right now, but they're part of the old structure. They've got to come out and form their own thing. That's Sean Foyt, who's going around America singing Let Us Worship. He's one of the new brand. Kanye West is one of the new brand. Justin Bieber's one of the new brand. The new wine. They're going to have their own movie stars and their own musicians that are going to come out publicly for Christ and going to lead millions of people away.
Right.
And the established church are going to be saying they're led away in a cult. And
yeah, this makes sense. There's going to be a gigantic earthquake in the church.
Yeah.
Because you're going to have the current church structure, which is not going to be attracted to this new group coming.
Yeah.
And
well, see, it's not attractive. This refers on to Matthew's book, Why Revival Tarries. Matthew's book, Why Revival Tarries, talks about how the church does not love and doesn't know how to love. And you're not going to see any form of revival until you learn how to love. Right. Well, the fact of the matter is, Matthew wrote that a couple of years ago. The church isn't going to change. The church is used to not loving, and the church refuses to love. So there's going to be no revival come to the church. It's going to come to this new movement. Right. And the witches and the warlocks and the prostitutes and the drug lords, they come to the modern church and they get rejected, and and given the impression that they're not welcome. And so they try church out, and church doesn't work for them. So that, and that's because they're new wine, and they're coming into an old wineskin, and it's too bitter. Right? Jesus is true. It just overflows and bursts the wineskin. And the church isn't going to change for them. The modern church isn't going to change to adapt for homosexuals. Yeah.
Right.
Can you imagine homosexuals coming in and holding hand and kissing in church? Like they can't clean up their sin life straight away. This is the hypocrisy of the church, that they expect people to be saved, to be sinless, but they're full of gossip and slander and sin themselves. But they expect other people to be sinless to come to church. And so there's going to be a whole new movement. And that's what's going to take the 20 to 30 years to put in the infrastructure that's going to make that happen.
So you're in support of what if I were to put it another way, we're a significant amount of investment in all those areas you discussed, in the movies, in the music industry, in in magazines, in websites, in social media, massive investment to change the culture with those mountains, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
To turn the tide, to bring the glory of God, like Isaiah 60, so to speak, right?
Yeah. That's exactly it. And that's where my money and my friends' money will go. It won't be necessarily finding Christians that are doing it right, but empowering Christians who want to do it right. And there's not a lot of them. They're really rare, Dundee. It's really rare. It's really rare to find a Christian who's interested in saving people who aren't saved.
Right.
You know, how many Christians would go into a witch's coven? If they were told that witches were having a barbecue, like a meal at a restaurant, and how many of them would? A couple of them, 2 or 3 of them, would go and prophetically evangelize the coven of witches. Like, they got an official invitation from the witches to come and do prophecy. How many of them would turn up and prophesy to the witches? Like,
right.
Do you know how powerful it is? Matthew's done this. How powerful it is to prophesy over a witch. You're prophesying their future to them, right? You're commanding their future based on what comes out of your mouth.
Right.
It's powerful.
Right.
But the church as you know it, that they're not interested in that. Jesus, in his parable, he said, and I'm using Matthew's intellect here. In his parable, he said he sent his invitations out to his friends, and his friends said, "I've got someone to bury. I've bought some new property," and they made their excuses. So he said, "Go out to the highways and byways and compel them to come in, and get all the good and the bad, and compel them, because the harvest." Well, we're right there now. We're right there now in the time scale of things. Jesus has compelled the church, and the church has got no interest in saving the people on the highways. So now Ezekiel 34 and Jeremiah 23 and Malachi 3 are going to start to happen, and he's going to be sending his servants out to save the people on the highways and the byways. And Matthew hasn't got a church to take him to. Matthew's got one church that used to visit, and it's in COVID at the moment, but he's got one church that he'd take people to. But yeah.
So you want to act basically like a go-between, like I can't think of the term, but the double agent, I guess, where your feet are on two sides. You're on this side, in the darkness side, you're calling people in, or you're helping them to go you know, to the light, so to speak.
Yeah.
And at the same time as you're doing this, of course, you're positioned in both camps at the same time.
Yeah.
How do you think people are going to understand that double agent status?
Um, people, you know by your authenticity. You're known by your word. You're known by your emotions. Um, people will know. Um, uh, People will know me because of the way I'm dealing. Uh, th- there's things that are said in public and things that are said in private, and I'm going to be used mainly to bring supporters uh, to the system. A lot of the people I bring may remain as double agents themselves, but the harvest will come in, won't it?
Yeah,
And that's the important thing, you know.
right.
Yeah, it's not as it's not like if um if you could save the high priestess of a coven, right? The witch in charge of a coven. If you could save her and then she could come out and become a Christian and then stop coming to the coven, that's one. Or what if she stayed in the coven as the high priestess and converted 80% of the coven? Which would be the better option? Would it be better that she stayed or better that she just gets saved and it's just herself?
As a leader, you'd want to pull as many out as you could. Yeah,
Right. Now, how long does she have to stay to bring the 80% through?
that's a good question.
See, now that's what Christians don't look at. Christians can't see that, right? They can't see that she's a whole lot more effective being in her role and saving people. You know, the opposite is true in churches. There's so many churches that are meeting as covens now, right? That it's church upstairs, on Sunday morning, but on Wednesday night there's a coven downstairs, and there's satanic witchcraft and people getting raped and murdered and stuff, and it's a proper operating church, but it's a coven, and everyone that goes on Sunday finances it, and they got no idea that they're running a coven. Well, why can't the opposite be true? Why can't a coven be meeting privately on a Wednesday, but 80% of them meeting as Christians? Why can't we do the opposite, the other way around?
Right.
Right? No, Matthew only found out that through another woman who used to get raped on the Wednesday night. One of her altars used to take her to the Wednesday night meeting and she'd be raped. And it wasn't until she got further healing that she realized that she was going into an alternate personality, turning up at this church, being raped, and then coming back and then switching back. So the Christian church are pretty twisted. Like, for instance, Matthew has had so many questions about Michael Jackson being a Christian. How could be in heaven? He never professed Christ. But who says a person can't be saved on the deathbed? Like, is Jesus Jesus, right? And if a person loves Jesus, did they ever have to make a public confession? Did they have to say in the media, I love Jesus, I'm a Christian, right? Like Justin Bieber has said it so many times, but he throws up Illuminati signs and all sorts of people say that he's not a Christian. Well, how many times does he have to say it, right? President Trump has renounced white supremacists 100 times, but he keeps on having to say it. They keep on asking him the question, right? How many times is enough? and Jesus is big enough to save. If Jesus wants to save 80% of people, he have his second coming and 80% of the covenant goes to heaven, and they're still performing witchcraft right up until the day. Isn't that up to Jesus, how he's going to do things? And wouldn't the covenant be a better church than the modern church at the moment?
That sounds, I mean, I understand your viewpoint. It's going to be messy.
Yeah, well, that's how things are. That's how the Holy Spirit is. The Holy Spirit's messy. Like, do you honestly think that this is, how many people do you think could have done this? How
Right.
many Christians do you know that could speak in my voice?
I don't know of any, except Matthew.
Yeah, but how is he doing it and being so relaxed? Is it because he's already done it 40 times before now?
Yeah, that's why.
That they were the rehearsal for this,
Right.
you know?
So I know very, very little about witchcraft. I have not
Matthew
participated in
knows
it.
nothing about it either. That's
Right. But
this would be a whole lot better interview if he knew more. But he's purposely stayed away from studying it.
so I guess my question would be, since I don't know anything about it, what would be the draw into witchcraft? Let's say a person is given two choices: choose Jesus, choose witchcraft, and yet a whole slew of people are choosing witchcraft. What would be the draw to go into the dark side when you could be living in the direction you want to take?
Jesus has got no power. Christianity's got no power. There's no discernible power in Christians. But there's power straight away in witchcraft. You could get promoted and be astral traveling and reading minds and doing healings in witchcraft in your first 6 months. You can't do that in Christianity. Christianity's a bunch of pansies, you know. And how many people do you know, Dundee, that can heal sick people?
Not many.
Do you know any?
Yeah.
What, you know, Praying Medic? Do you know anyone else?
Yeah. The guy that took over John G. Lake's ministry. I can't remember his name.
Yeah, right. He can, and Praying Medic. But how many millions of Christians do you know of?
Oh, not many.
Right, like you know thousands of Christians. You know thousands of Christians, but you only know 2 Christians with power.
Right.
100% of witches have got power. That's the draw. They want power. They want to be able to stop their dad sexually molesting them. They want to do something. They want to give him a disease. They want to wipe out his crutch. And they can just do a curse on him and a spell on him and take his hands off her. They want to, like, abuse victims, people being abused, they want to get some power to hit people back really hard. So it's really attractive. These people who are going to win the world, they're going to be able to heal and do signs and wonders, but the average Christian can't. It's no competition. Pick Christ, pick witchcraft. You get a young teen, and they want the power and the mystique of witchcraft.
That makes sense. I understand that.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you had people in mind that you wanted to introduce to us to bring into this conversation, into this mix.
Yeah.
Do you have a time frame, or how many people, or how would you like to progress into that?
I've got one called Susan that I'll introduce in our next call, and you can have a talk to her. She's involved with some high-level witches. Matthew, I haven't given Matthew any time when we're going to be contacting in real time. but because he's been through so many delusions, I don't want to have him have to answer that question. Yeah, but I'll introduce other people as we see fit. I'd like just Autie to be able to listen to this and give it the thumbs up, you know?
Is there going to be a time where we're actually going to meet him in person, or meet him like video Skype, or is this going to be like the, clandestine like we're doing right now?
There's going to be a time where you're going to be in that boardroom. When I mentioned about the boardroom and the brands and meeting for a couple of companies, when I mentioned that, you saw the boardroom and you saw yourself in that room. So that's a real meeting in the future. Yeah. And I don't know if you saw the city that was in, but that was in New York City, and it was in a boardroom and on a top floor of a skyscraper there.
Okay.
And they were all Christian brands that were. It was a meeting, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you said, if we're going to plan and strategize to bring influence for Christ into those, I would call them mountains, like mountain of media, mountain of the movie industry, the music industry, there's all kinds of ways of influencing people. And
Yeah.
you're talking about strategizing and building companies and building ways of influencing people with that in mind.
Yeah. How far are we in the questions?
We only have one more left.
Right. Yeah.
So I just wanted to use Matthew's questions this time. We can maybe branch off from my questions next time. I wanted to keep it on Matthew's. He had 7 questions, and I kind of branched off of those 7 a little bit. But I guess his last question is, do you enjoy meeting with us like this?
Yeah, it's a real joy. I can't give you time frames, as long as you can review the files, and Autie can review the files and give a heads up and say that's definitely him speaking. Everything's fine. I enjoyed that. I can't give you time frames for specific when we're going to meet in person. I'm going to write you an email and say, do you want to speak on Skype? But just know, if you're understanding what I'm saying, and you know that it's not Matthew pretending to be someone else, and it's true and authentic, just know that God's been working on me my whole life, so I'm not in any rush to make things real. But this, as you can imagine, this is going to be a book full of good information for people to see that, and especially people already involved in the Masonic Lodge and Illuminati right now. It'd be an interesting book for them to be intrigued about who's this person who's defecting, and the information that's covered. So I enjoy meeting you, and I've been looking forward to it. Matthew was going to do these 7 questions himself, just with me, because he wanted to talk to me. He started for 10 minutes, and I said to him, we're going to do the questions another day. And he's just talking, and he finished the video, and then I said, don't upload that. And then said, you're going to do it with Dundee. And so it's good to talk to you. You ask good questions, Dundee, and just know that even if just the book was produced and it piqued the interest of certain Christians and certain people in darkness, even if that's all that came of this, and it was a couple of years before we made touch and started doing things, I just want to reassure you there's no rush, right? The church certainly isn't ready for any revival.
Right.
if 20%, if 1 billion people got saved in the next 6 months, they'd fall out of the church. It'd be like an overflow. Like if you had ground that's been dry for a year in drought, and it's all got caked and it's got all holes in it, if you give pouring rain to that ground, it all runs off, right?
Mhm.
Well, that's how the church would happen if you had a massive revival now. All the people would run off. They'd go to church for a month. They'd realize the church is full of people that are jerks and not loving, and it would run off, and they'd all go back into what they were into before, and they'd give up on Christianity. So the church thinks it's repenting, and we've got to repent, and we've got to have revival, but the church structure isn't even ready for revival.
Right.
You know, if you saved 1 billion people, they'd be infected. It's like they get infected with the Christianity virus.
Right.
And so something's got to be rebuilt. So there's no rush.
Right. Right.
Jesus has been planning this since Isaiah wrote Isaiah 60.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the most important things you said, I mean, I'm not coming from your background. You understand, the people in your spheres of influence and how they think and how they're indoctrinated, I guess would be the way to put it. And you just, you said, ask Jesus to show them the way. Help them to understand that he's real, and help them to know the way, the way to the true God, if you want to call it that. And to, it could be in a dream, it could be in any form. You know that God is supernatural and that Jesus is supernatural. And you also know that when Jesus shows up, you never forget it.
Yeah.
And so if they don't know, then I would say, yes, just ask Jesus to reveal himself in a way that they understand him and to show them the way.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's been fun having a chat, and I really look forward to it. But just remember, that there's no rush.
Right.
Yeah, and as long as you get approvals of Orty of the videos, and he says that you're not in delusion, this is truly happening. You can just make time for the interviews, and come up with other questions. Don't harangue yourself. Don't be harassed with not coming up with questions. You can ask me any question. I've lived a pretty full life. You can ask me any questions about it. And Matthew wondered in the first video that he wasn't going to upload it, and then when I informed him that he'll make the second video without mentioning me by name, and he'll edit the first video, that it's going to become a book. He's got it on his Destiny Scroll. Someone did Destiny Scrolls for him, and it said books on the Illuminati. And he wondered when he was ever going to write a book on the Illuminati. Well, this is one of them. And yeah.
Yeah. So, the next video or whatever, we can talk about, people are going to be interested in what is the Illuminati? What are their goals? What is their agenda? How do they operate? I mean, that would be an interesting segue, because in talking about where you're coming from, they're probably going to want to hear some background information on, behind the scenes revelations.
Matthew'd have to do research on that, because he doesn't know anything about it either. So,
right.
Yeah, it's hard. It's like do you know anything about quantum physics?
No.
Well, how would you talk about it?
Right.
It's like I can make a voice speak through Matthew, but how can I get him to talk about quantum physics? Like, he can't even form the words that would be used.
Right.
So it's hard for me to say what are the goals of the Illuminati and the structure of the Illuminati and the concepts of the Illuminati when Matthew's got no idea what they are.
Right.
It's hard for me um, to sum up the Illuminati is one world domination, like a socialist Luciferian government, a one world government, one world religion, and you can see the patterns going towards that right now, and they're really increasing. Satan is in a rush. Here's the difference. God's not in a rush, but Satan is.
So that begs the question, why would he be in a rush if he's going to win?
Well, he's aware of the legend and he's aware of the outpouring, and he's aware, he's heard it so many times that he's scared of it. Remember that Satan's kingdom runs through fear, and Satan's got enough fear of his own. Yeah. But the current church isn't up to the task.
Right.
I'll give you some homework. Read Why Revival Tarries and Optimistic Visions of Revelation, and get your next 10 questions out of those books.
Okay.
Because then we'll be able to discuss at length what the next 20 years is going to entail. So do some research, read them. You'll have an understanding of how the current church is incapable in Why Revival Tarries, and how the new modern church is going to. Must have been a few years since you read those books, and much of what you're talking about the future is in that book. Yeah, and it's just not going to be one person. The greatest resource we need, which is hard to find, is the actual servants that go out to the highways and byways. We could have, $100 billion or $1 trillion, but if we haven't got servants that can go out to the actual lesbians and the witches and meet them face to face, we could have $1 trillion, but it'd do nothing because you need the actual servants to go out and spread the gospel.
Right.
So there's got to be, initially, find the people who are going to be used for the army. Initially, you got to find the army. You got to start the companies. It's a process. You just can't dump money on it.
Right.
You
have to build the infrastructure.
Yeah, you got to find the people first.
Right.
And that could be, done with an advertising campaign on Facebook and find revivalists and stuff. And yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Good news is Matthew's brother contacted him yesterday. And
Really?
yeah, so I'll turn the video off.